Welcome to CXD, the podcast from Engine, where we explore the art and science of reimagining customer experiences. Now, we know that AI is going to revolutionise the way we work, lead, and interact with service providers, and it's going to profoundly reshape human experience. So in this episode, we're going to try and connect some of the dots between how employees and leaders adapt, how AI is used, sometimes secretly, and how customer experiences will evolve. My name is Oliver King, and I'm a managing partner at Engine. Welcome to CXD. Today I'm joined by Stefan Moritz, a thought leader in innovation, leadership, and the future of work. He's head of innovation at Max Matthiessen, one of Sweden's largest insurance brokers, and he's professor of service design innovation at SDSI, which is a really cool Erasmus Mundus joint master's degree in Northern Europe with a focus on service design, management, and leadership. Now, Stefan's got over 20 years of experience. He's held leadership roles at global firms, award-winning agencies, and McKinsey advising businesses and the public sector. He helps organisations empower employees, enhance customer experience, and drive growth. And his work spans governments, public institutions, and brands like Lego, IKEA, Ericsson, Amex, Disney, and Adidas. Stefan, it's great to have you on the show. So Stefan, you've been working at the intersection of AI, design, and experience. What excites you most about how AI is reshaping the way we work and interact with services?
What actually excites me most are these sort of mind-blowing moments that have happened the last few years. The first one that I really remember is when I saw a website that was called "This Person Does Not Exist." And it looked like sort of a Photoshop mashup of faces, which we used to make personas at the time. And later you could even calibrate Spanish, old lady. And then I read up on it and I learned about GAN models and I was like, what? Like you can actually grow pixels in the lab. And those things a kind of fun moment when your mind is blown. So I really enjoy those. And they tend to happen more frequently last 2 or 3 years. But I think what I'm hoping we can get to is that we go past that shiny sort of wow stuff and actually, and I mean, we can discuss this later, but how do we make sense of this and how do we actually not fall into the trap of letting it happen to us, but us shaping the experiences we want to create. So that's the exciting bit that I see coming, but it's unfolding.
Oh, it definitely is. But some people see AI as a real sort of as a threat, threat to jobs, threat to sort of human connection and that kind of stuff. And others see it as a way of really enhancing human potential. Where I can guess, but where do you stand on that?
I think there is a difference between sort of recognizing the fear or the uncertainty or the iffiness that we can feel as people. And I think it's fair and important to recognize that. And I think the problem is that we tend to then fall into two camps. Either we're sort of over glossifying and exciting, or we go into a skeptic mode. And I think it's a combination of both, and it's important that we sort of switch perspectives on that sometimes. When we talked about future of work, I remember I did at the service design conference a gig where I had a robot on stage and did an interview with an AI maybe 10 years ago. And we talked about that, jobs are being replaced. Already then we talked about 50% of tasks can be automated. So that's how Stanford and also McKinsey is measuring it. Like how many tasks can be automated? How often do we do these tasks? But obviously a job is not just a mosaic of tasks. There's a lot more dynamic going on, especially in collaboration. So the tricky thing is that it's a black box. And as a society, in a way, we've gone through this whole thing in digital the last 15 years. So for me, that is like a parallel joint experience that in the beginning, there were these hyped startups, and then everybody said, yeah, see, it doesn't work. And then actually something profoundly changed industries. And I think we will see that unfolding as well over the next 15 years. It's just that the development is so much faster and the boxes are so much blacker. So it's, I mean, even the experts don't know how it works. Then you start having a problem. So it's obvious that people feel a bit uncertain
Yeah.
about this.
No, I love that. I love that. The boxes are black, and they certainly are. And this is like the event horizon is much closer, and we can't, we can't really see over it. I think you're right. That's what kind of creates that that anxiety. So we know that AI is already really transforming the workplace, but often in ways that organisations probably aren't fully aware of. I mean, we know that employees are kind of integrating AI tools into their daily work. I mean, sometimes without actual kind of formal approval, and whether that's to kind of automate tasks, to generate insights, to even developing their own kind of AI-powered assistants to streamline their workflows, and this really raises big questions, doesn't it? As AI becomes much more embedded in how people work, what does it mean to the organisation? How might it really kind of shift the way we think about expertise, where we think about skills, or even kind of like who owns the knowledge in the workplace? And if AI is effectively becoming this extension of an employee's thinking, how should companies really rethink training, leadership, career development? I mean, that's a big thing. How do you see this beginning to play out in the workplace?
Yeah, so this is 15 questions in one.
No, I know, sorry, just pile them in
But
there.
I think if we look at what is happening in organizations, there's been a report last week from Anthropic really looking at the data of who is using AI. I remember there is a statistic that in Europe 60% of people are using AI at work without disclosing it to their company. So, whilst the leadership in the boardroom is thinking about creating a policy, it's happening, and that's a fact. It's mostly technical people actually using it. So programmers are using it to program faster, and that's a large chunk. Actually, very senior people are using it a lot to test things and get guidance. And there becomes a question of inclusion, diversity, accessibility, fairness that we need to think about, because probably the people that need it most don't have access or don't know where to get started. And I mean, I can remember the feeling after I first heard about Google and this internet was out there. You felt like, I mean, it felt like walking around London. You're missing out all the time. You're sort of, oh my God, where is this stuff that everybody's talking about? And I think it's a little bit, so people have also inflated expectations. So the way that I think about it, from at least a white collar work perspective, we should treat AI like a colleague. And you would never invite a colleague without a briefing. I mean, people do, but you shouldn't, right? So if you give AI a chance and you explain properly what we're doing here and how we're working and who is contributing, it will do a lot better job. And from a leadership perspective, I think the most important thing is maybe two things. One, to get out of the superhero, as a leader, you need to know it all model, because that is gone. And I call it learning by example, right? So if you as a leadership team show to the organization you are vulnerable and you are learning and you're curious and you actually go to the demos, not to give comments, but to listen and ask, you can actually in 3 weeks completely transform your performance as a leader. And I think AI can make us actually more human, more inspiring leaders. So there is kind of a nice way. Can you play with AI to learn it and be more human? So that's a path I really believe in. And the second one is to think about the second or third degree of implication. So Microsoft Copilot, it can listen to meetings and write a nice transcript, right? I mean, like now the podcast is being transcribed perfectly in the background. I mean, that's awesome. Now, in a company, that means all the meetings are now on tab. And if you don't think about as a leader what happens next, that's where the problem is, right? So how do you create a culture where people feel comfortable that the company is listening and they understand the benefit for their growth, they understand the benefit for feedback, for collaboration. If you make that a positive thing, it's fantastic. If they all think, ooh, big brother is listening, let's change the conversation, and the real meetings happen after the meetings, you have a problem. The other thing is, just because you can record meetings doesn't mean you should have boring meetings. So there is an opportunity to completely rethink, okay, now that meetings can be sort of summarized, how should we have meetings actually? Because then you can give updates to everybody and be a lot more productive, but not in a sense of more efficient, in a sense of greater human performance, greater quality, greater collaboration. And if we get that right, it's amazing. But it's a journey. We need to learn our way forward. It's not that nobody has figured it out yet. And that is exciting and daunting at the same time.
It is, and it will be incredibly disruptive, won't it, to leadership. We know that I guess with AI, we know that decision making can become far more data driven and automated, and then that means, doesn't it, that the role of the leader, what it means to lead, really shifts from being this this matriarchal, patriarchal kind of source of knowledge to being the people who are within the organization helping to kind of create meaning, create connection, kind of guide human potential. And so you're dead right. It can make us much better leaders. It can make us more, aware of our organization. What the sentiment is, what the feelings are. It can really, I guess, reduce that bias in decision making, because it enables you to, like you talk about the transaction. Not transaction, what I'm talking about, the transcript, sorry, in meetings. It can enable you to actually hear what's being said to me. Now, I had an example the other day where there was in a meeting, and I just hadn't heard something somebody had said, which is a really important point. And it wasn't until we sort of played it back, we went, oh my gosh, and it just completely changed the lens on the conversation.
I mean, one cool example I saw was from EY. They created a tool that's called the elephant in the room. So it listens to the conversation and it says the things that weren't said.
It does what? How? What? It does what? What doesn't? So it's understanding what's being said, and it's smart enough to know.
And it raises issues around inclusion and the unspoken things that should be addressed. There's another example that Reid Hoffman made with different phones that all are prompted to be different perspectives. So one was the historian, one was the devil's advocate, and they listened to the meeting, and you could pick them up. And it's like, okay, let's hear now from a historical perspective, what can we learn from the old Greeks about this? And it would chip that in context, right? Which then leads us to the thought, you and I could have this carousel of experts. We go for coffee and it's a discuss amongst yourselves. And when we come back, you debrief us, how we should think about this. And that's where I think we need to get to, that this is a collaborative way of thinking. Not everybody has a tool that helps them write emails. Sure, you can do that. But the really interesting thing is when it becomes a glue and you can say, okay, hang on, shall we just invite the CFO to talk about how this fits with the numbers? And the CFO avatar can speak about how he or she would be thinking about the real-time numbers. So when we have the meeting with the real CFO, we can be way more strategic and have a much better prepared dialogue. So it becomes like the Amazon memo on steroids, that the whole organization is tuned and connected all the time.
Yeah, I'm just going back to the point you made about referring to them as AIs as digital colleagues. I think that's brilliant, and I've heard them in the work that we do. I've heard them being referred to as digital employees, which feels fairly sort of transactional. But digital colleagues, that's great. That does suggest a much more collaborative approach to it, and that ability to. I love the idea you said about a carousel of experts around your conversation, but that would just help you to make sure that the matter at hand, gets taken much further forward to a point where a decision can be, where a good decision can
Exactly.
be taken about it, which is incredibly powerful to be able to have and very exciting.
And I mean, that's important for empathy. I mean, if we talk about customer experience design, I remember when we made personas, I had an idea a long time ago. Why don't we make a Facebook profile where you can actually meet the persona and get to know them? Now you can build synthetic personas, and everybody in the company can actually test ideas with personas in real time. You can connect it to real-time data. And I met a scientist yesterday that they build synthetic populations. So you can even see social dynamics on a digital twin of a certain group of people. So as a business, you can basically test ideas with, your real people, but combine it with trends. And so I think we'll see a new way of, connecting internally, but also connecting it back externally and have much more dynamic, talking about rendering experiences as they happen in real time. There are these games now where the story is written and the avatars can be agents. That will set expectations that also permeate every other service, right? That you expect things to be personalized and dynamic all the time.
I have to be very conscious in these conversations to keep my mouth closed, because I found myself just my jaw just drops every time I hear about different applications of AI and what they can do, and it is so incredibly exciting. I mean, there's another sort of generation. So we're very familiar with things like Midjourney and ChatGPT and the like, but there, in terms of like the generative AIs, there's a new generation of AIs coming out, which are these agentic AIs, and I guess what they're doing is they are they have much more autonomy. They're more sort of contextually aware and are able to kind of do more stuff, and those AIs in the future, are able to sort of take over, not just assisting in interactions, but kind of take over those interactions. With more of them kind of managing tasks and making decisions, and even, I guess, at times of negotiating, to get what the human wants in that situation. But we're moving towards a world, aren't we, where much of the interaction between businesses and consumers may well end up at that first initial level, sort of AI to AI rather than human to human.
At the moment, I see that many brands are thinking about agents as the new apps, right? So we should have an agent if we're an airline, so you can book with the virtual agent, which to me is a little bit classical mistake. That also, if you go back to digital, I remember when we redesigned the flight departure in an airport, they literally had a digital screen with wooden blocks as boxes because they've taken the analog world into digital, and we're doing the same. So everything is now chat, because we see chat is the thing, even if it doesn't make any sense. And I think for many commodity services, telco, energy, insurance, maybe you don't want to talk to an agent. Maybe actually every family will have their own concierge that to sort these things out. And you say, hey, family, I've renegotiated our broadband. It's now twice as fast and cheaper, just so you know. Okay. And then the question is a little bit, who has the ownership of the family concierge? Because that's where the new interface lives. And there will be a brutal battle between Amazon, Apple, and Google as usual. But as a brand, it means, I don't want to talk to an airline to book a flight. I want to talk to airlines to book the best flight. And it knows, my son is much longer than me. He probably needs leg room. And we prefer direct flights. And, it knows everything about that. It knows the meal preferences. So you don't need to go to some stupid website to fill in stuff when you're renting a car. So I think what I see happening is that expectations are changing dramatically, because people are from especially COVID plus digital, we are much more tuned to try things now. Even older population, which before was always a young generation, they try new things, but it's changed. I think what I see coming, and maybe somebody will create it, is a version of Uber where AIs can borrow people to help them with stuff that AIs can't do yet. So you'll have an AI saying, hey, I need a photo of Westminster. Can you go and take one, please? And it will become sort of a version of TaskRabbit that AIs can. So I think we can think about this always, and I think we need to be fair to the AIs that they've not been around very long. Let's give them a chance. At the moment, they are more a mirror of what humankind has done than anything else, and maybe that's why we are so scrutinizing. But I think if we embrace that as a chance for reflection, for learning, again, we can become better as people, and we can support them with guardrails. And again, like in any collaboration, you need to have a culture that is mutual. So we need to kind of define experiences as mutually valuable, including those systems. And I think it can be much more fun to work in a setting like that if we get it right. So therefore, I think, again, experience design to say, how would we like this to be, is crucial. Because if we just go, oh, cool, let's have a chatbot so you can see what's in your fridge and make a recipe. Well, sure. I mean, we've talked about that with Siemens for, many years ago. But if you actually think about the experience as a parent, the magical moment is not when you come home and you look in the fridge and you say, oh, forgot what to make for dinner, stress. The magical moment is Thursday morning, the AI coach going, hey, I got 3 recipes for tonight. They all work for every allergy and, the diet of the uncle. It fits with what we've had recently, so it's not like repetitive. We're reusing stuff that we already have in the fridge. It's considering what's sustainable and what's, in season and in store, what anywhere needs to be used. Which one do you want? Done. It orders it, so when you come home, the video is there for the kids to get involved, and, it's fun. So the stress is gone. And so I think we need to look at timelines like you do in experience design and to create positive value flows in a whole new way. So it's super exciting.
That paints a lovely picture. But I had a horrible Black Mirror moment as you were saying that, and thinking about how important that they become a digital member of the family, right? In that way. But we have right now in divorce courts people arguing over who gets the dog or the cat. But who's going to get this AI that's been and is that right anyway? But that's grown to understand all that everybody needs within that, has become such an incredibly important part of a family existence.
That is a great thing that you should write into the prenup from the beginning. And I mean, the good thing with AI is you can copy paste, so you can share it much better than cats. So get an AI, don't get a cat. My tip. But I think the same thing is also happening at work, right? So if we are now starting to see learning systems, which I think, as an employer, the pension that you pay will be even more important because people live much more dynamic lives. They'll get more aware of being flexible and so on. But the knowledge aspect, I saw some statistic that 1/3 of people that are leaving jobs are leaving them because they don't believe that company is the learning platform for them to be future-proof. So that's a very interesting new demand for companies. And the question then is, if I work at Engine for 3 years, I love it, I learn a lot, and my AI co-pilot agent network that I'm part of obviously learns from me, which is part then of the company, and it should be. I mean, you signed that in the contract, right? My IP goes for that period of time to Engine. But when I leave, I want to take my pen with me and my notebook. What am I allowed to take with me? Because now we're not talking about contribution to projects and ideas I've contributed. You're talking about deeper learning that you need to bring to the next job. So just like you're talking about bringing your AI after a divorce, people will want to bring their second brain to their next job. And that's something that we need to think about from a legal perspective, from a fairness perspective. But I think that's super interesting.
Do you think businesses are thinking about that, or are they just having a blanket policy out of fear about can't do this, can't do that, can't do the other? Are you aware of those sorts of conversations?
The conversations are definitely happening, but if you calibrate those few conversations with where we are today in 2025 regarding hybrid work, it's scary, right? I mean, I remember when we came out of COVID, I was super hopeful that now companies would take the proactive move and actually design how they want to work. That is, fair, inclusive, smart, collaborative, asynchronous. I mean, so many opportunities, and it's gone largely untapped. I think maybe 10% of companies have tried, and many are still now discussing maybe we should bring people back to the office.
Well, that's a lot. There seems to be a big sort of rallying cry now about get back into the office, and that, as opposed to better understanding how it all comes together. And there are really good, there are good obvious reasons to do that, just for well-being and to coach and to develop people. But that isn't the only way, surely, of doing it. People have just kind of gone back. Let's go back to how it was, as opposed to how it could be, and how we could, solve and innovate for those things today with the tools that we have.
Yeah, and I think that is where I see a big opportunity, but also responsible for design, because many people don't have the imagination to make that leap and the tools to actually design for inclusivity and for better outcomes. And this is not saying we should listen to the people, and if they want to work from Mallorca, let's let them. Because I think that there's a lot of that danger as well, that leadership becomes too casual and confuse empowerment with just letting people do what they want. And just the same with customers. We've always said that you can't ask customers to solve things for you, but if you spend the time to understand what really matters, and you take the time to imagine how a solution could be that's better for society, for the company, for people, I mean, it's possible to do it, but it takes a little bit of effort, unfortunately.
So I wanted to circle back a little bit to sort of a more traditional focus on customer experience. And we've talked about the way digital colleagues, AIs, can now get much more involved in the curation and provision of those experiences. But this probably raises questions around trust, brand differentiation, emotional connection. If digital colleagues, brackets AI, are handling more of the relationships, what happens to that human experience? How do businesses maintain identity? How do a sense of personalization, human connection, emotion within the experience? When the interaction is with the AI, and sometimes between the brand's AI and the customer's AI, rather than with the customer themselves. That feels like it's a big loss somehow.
I think I will take this back to the magical moment that I love about our work, which is when you have a session where executives meet customers in a setting where we're imagining what great could be. And this human spark happens of understanding the actual deeper opportunity and how we could step up to be more valuable and more helpful. I think that is the essence we need to sort of focus on. If you look at companies that are now basically saying, let's get more automation, more efficiency, that is obviously the first business value that you can get. Many get actually very little value out of it in reality. But the problem isn't that. I mean, that is something that has always happened and takes time to understand how to set the right KPIs and follow through. But if you think about the finance organization, you have 100 people in your finance team, you could easily throw AI in there and get 30-40% efficiency. But if you think about the purpose of the finance organization is actually to help the company be more adaptable, more resilient, smarter, do things with resources to unlock more value creation. And if you think about it from that end of what is the value that we're actually trying to create, there's a lot AI can do to accelerate that, to kind of give some huge oomph on that. And automatically it will also become more efficient. I mean, like in every service design, when you find stuff that is great for the customer and you design it as a win-win, you will get better experience for the customer that is actually cheaper to deliver, and employees love it more. So we need to kind of go back to that flywheel and say, how can we support that with AI rather than get sidetracked? And in terms of differentiation, I think we need to distinguish between services where the human quirks and serendipity and feelings and surprises are valuable, and we want to have those, versus things where we say, this should be seamless, and you take them out, and you make them disappear. I think that seamless is overrated in many experiences because you need friction to learn and understand and ensure that people actually know what they're doing when it comes to finance, health. You don't want everything to be just disappeared. But if we can, I mean, for example, if you look at your customer journey, you can of course design every aspect of it and make it perfect. But if you zoom out and you focus on the moments that really matter emotionally, either highs or lows, it gives you sort of a sense, if there's emotion, it's something that people really care. And then you can reflect, is this something where, we want to really as a brand show up with our full, and I would call it superhuman force, because I'm not saying it's either or. Somebody at reception in a fantastic boutique hotel in France, there is nothing to say that they couldn't have read up on the customer that's walking through the door and know they've been here before and they like the window with the view. I mean, that's what you expect, and it's still not happening. But they can still say, we have a new kind of tea. My grandmother made that. You can enjoy that on the balcony with the view that you always like. So we need to kind of, in those magical moments, not say, that's without AI, because that's human. I think we need to do superhuman and super magical in those moments that really matter, and then use efficiency, smarter collaboration to make everything else level up. Because otherwise you can't compete. Like if you don't do the basics as well, you'll have great moments, but it will fall flat and trust will erode. So it needs to be coherently configured somehow.
Of course. The thing is, right, with this technology, it's about speed. And if you go back, whatever, a couple of decades, a couple of 100 years, when there was sort of, industrial innovations coming up, a company probably felt it had time to get on board with that, because like yeah, but we're not going to change that quickly. We've got years for that sort of stuff. But the pace of change now, the velocity, the clock speed is just incredible. So there must be enormous pressure we've got to make a decision, because if we're left behind, we are going to be so far behind so quickly.
Going back to what you said earlier, Oli, on differentiation, it's important to think through, where does speed matter, right? So, I mean, I read this book from Stefan Moritz about the naked ape, which talks about how much of our decision-making being is still grounded in our reptile brain, right? If you imagine our cave time ancestors sitting around, you had to be tuned to movement. So if a leopard runs by, you better focus on that a bit more than, the moose is still lying there, we're eating it tomorrow. So we are tuned to be distracted. And I think a lot of what is happening is that while maybe in the industrial, when you were shoveling coal into the locomotive, we had physical pain. Now everything is happening in our headspace, and it's a lot to deal with, right? So it's important from a leadership perspective to take time out and do some perspective taking on where does the speed actually impact us? Because there's a lot of superficial stuff where this looks like, okay, our competition now has an agent. We also need an agent. And we've all been there, right? That the client comes in and says, we now need a chatbot. And it's like, well, hang on. Or, connect the toothbrush or whatever it was. Why? And if you can sort of say, okay, some of these things we don't need to own, like a learning system, for example. You don't need to own the learning system. You need to own the culture of learning and make that your competitive wow. But you want to have a learning platform that is a sort of middle layer that is using the best models and mixes them together. So you don't want to put your learning platform on ChatGPT or Gemini. Then you're stuck with that. And then, some Deep Purple comes out of Korea and you're like, woo, we didn't see that coming. There is a fair sense of FOMO where, again, some people then go very reluctant and go like, well, this is just all, you will see, we've been there before. And that's probably dangerous. And other people that just sort of every week come in with something new and the whole organization gets confused and disrupted. So kind of programming a little bit around that and say, what rituals can we have? And it should probably start from leaders learning by example to say, every Friday, I'm going to spend some time to reflect what was good this week and what could I do more? Which, surprisingly, we all want to do and fail to do often. I mean, at least I do. So kind of finding then a system where you say, as a company, how do we, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, take stock what is happening and prioritize? I mean, we had quarterly business reviews now in most organizations for a long time. Can you do a quarterly take stock of what's happening review? That's probably a good thing to do. But maybe it's also good to have a team that is living in the future, scouting and seeing what is happening. Because whilst I don't believe in just shiny toys being thrown at everything, there are now some real unlocks. And there is a certain serendipity that can happen, right? So you go to this cool conference and exactly you see that thing that is the door opener that you were needing, and that is possible. So you need to have people that are open for that. And again, some of this could be collaboration, have partnerships with some of these startups that are trying. I think for big company, that's always a great opportunity to learn by being a friendly partner.
We've covered an enormous amount today. We really have. We talked about how AI is quietly, reshaping work and leadership, and the evolving nature of customer experiences, and the challenges about making the right investments. And it's clear that AI isn't just another technological shift. It's fundamentally changing the way businesses operate, how leaders should lead, and how customers interact with brands and family life, frankly. So the challenge now is not just adopting AI, but as you're most recently saying, that it's about how we adapt mindsets, structures, strategies to really make the most of it. So this is a really hard question, I'm going to ask it anyway, but if there was like one piece of advice that you'd give to business leaders in navigating this AI-driven future, what would that be? And I know, perhaps what's the biggest mindset shift that individuals or organizations might need to adopt to get it right?
I think at the moment, my sort of one advice would be, let's not give the agency to the agents. Right? There is a lot of cool stuff that you can delegate and it will be fascinating, but we should keep ownership and authorship of our lives, of the experiences we deliver as brands, but also, as society, how we actually want to live together. And if we apply AI as a friendly force for good that helps us be more human, lead to be more caring and inspirational, then I think there's a lot of hope that this is going to be phenomenally beautiful. But we need to design it.
Fantastic! What a way to wrap that up. You're so right. You're so right. Stefan, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fascinating. It's been inspiring, and I deeply appreciate the insights and the perspectives. You've opened my mind to so many things. We're going to have more conversations. This isn't the last conversation we're having.
Looking forward.
And for those that are listening, so be sure to check out all the links in the description where you can learn more about Stefan, about CXT and Engine, as well as finding a whole bunch of resources to help you reimagine customer experiences, in this ever-evolving landscape. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow CXT, share it with your friends and colleagues, and keep an eye out for more discussions like this. We've got some great episodes coming up that you won't want to miss. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. See you soon.